Well, it's nice that not too much happened while I was gone on vacation, in the world at least. You know, I actually picked the sermon title well before yesterday. But I'm going to stick with it. So I had no idea that there would be such a thing as an overthrow of Venezuela yesterday. Did any of you have that thought? Oh, how should we feel about the state of the world as we enter in to 2026? How should we feel about ourselves as we head into a new year? Any of you make any of those ridiculous resolutions? Good for you. Well, you know, in Bible study, those of you that have been attending our class after worship, there are times in which we're talking about 1st and 2nd Timothy and about Titus. We're also talking about the fact that in the Bible itself, there are moments in which some of the key people that are writing to us speak in different ways. Let me give you an example. There are times in which Paul will talk from his own worldliness. In other words, he is giving advice and imparting advice to the church on the basis of what his observations have been, his life experiences, his education. He's not, in some of those cases, saying that this is what God has ordained and said for the church to do. Does that make a sense to you? That there can be different ways of speaking in an authoritative fashion? So like when Paul says, I believe that all women should have veils and they should sit on one side of the church and they should be quiet most of the time. We all know that that's not going to happen. Where was he talking from? He was talking from his own experience of life, as limited as it was in that particular time and context. But at other times, he seems to be talking with an authority that doesn't come from himself, that comes directly from God. Does that make sense? So let me speak in the voice of someone like Paul. Just my worldly experience and examples for just a moment as we begin today's sermon. First, I really think it's okay to be glad that the Venezuelan people are free and have a new opportunity to live without an oppressive president and perhaps an oppressive government. Is that fair enough to say? Second, I think it's also okay to worry about our involvement in another foreign conflict in a foreign country, because historically we haven't always gotten that right in terms of how to do that effectively and how to leave. Oh, and whether or not such use of power is even ever justifiable. Third, we should never, now this is me, this is David Poe speaking, so if you want to get mad, it's me. Third, I think we should never call ourselves a Christian nation, especially if we intend to drop bombs on Christmas Day, or think that killing people can be a righteous tool to bring about godly change. I think that is in fact blasphemy. Finally, now that I got your attention, you'll stretch for a second, okay? Just take a little bit of a break, all right? Finally, let's not assume that we know our scriptures. A lot of people assume they know the scriptures and therefore can speak in that second voice as if the authority comes directly from God. Let's not assume that we know our scriptures so well that we can do that until we have actually taken the time to study them. And so today what I'm proposing is that we simply look at today's scripture and see where it takes us on our journey of faith as we begin this new year. Does that sound like a plan? Okay, you're uncomfortable enough. I think we're ready to move on. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." Now, hold on a second, I need to edit. Donna said that. Donna shared that paragraph. I can add on here, but okay. It's always good. Yeah. Do you know how long the sermons would be without a person like Donna giving a children's sermon like she does every week? You'd be listening to me a long time. Thanks, John. Thanks. John Cole. Okay. The Magi, as Donna was saying, are probably not even kings. And we can't be certain that there were three of them. There were only three gifts mentioned, and that's how we come up with three kings. Some of you are aware of Catholic tradition actually gives names to the three kings. We don't know their names. It was given by tradition. Other people came along centuries later and said, we should name these people. If we're going to have them a nice little nativity scene, we should have names for them. So anyway, most likely these rich foreigners came probably in a very large caravan. I mean, think about it. They're coming most likely from the nation of Iraq. You think of the Middle East, Persian area. They're probably coming from Iraq, and they're making this trip all the way over to the Holy Land. Can you imagine how long it took? Some scholars say it could have taken them 2 years. And you ask, well, how do we know that? How do we know 2 years sounds right? Well, remember, later on in this chapter, you'll have to read the section with the gore and the violence. We could have done that today, but there could have been children present, in which King Herod decides, in the interest of his power and the interest of others, that every child under the age of 2 should be wiped out, because that way we make sure to kill this newborn king. All right? So we think that it might have taken as long as 2 years for them to follow that star to find Jesus. A long time to wait for gifts. Just mentioning that, I hate to wait a long time for these things. All right. And they probably were in this large caravan, like I'm saying, probably because, think about their physical needs. You got to eat. They're going through desert lands. So I can just imagine they had to bring a lot of equipment with them. And not to mention personal safety. All the roads of the day that I've ever read about are dangerous places. The Good Samaritan parable happened because why? Because the Jericho road was not a safe place to travel. And so to travel any length of a large journey was very, very perilous. The Magi, many scholars believe, may have been magicians, or what we might call kind of part magicians and part astronomers, who made a living by studying the stars. And here we've got a new word in our own generation that might even help us understand these guys a little bit better. Influencers, right? People. It's amazing to me that we have people that can make a living by just influencing people today. But Scripture tells us that these astronomer magicians might have also been influencers who made a living basically by telling the elite, established leaders of the world things that they thought they should know, using the best of their abilities and skills. Now, only Luke includes this story in his gospel. That's interesting. You should make a note of that, right? Now, the crucifixion of Jesus and his resurrection are found in all four Gospels, and so we know that's special. But like I told you before, his birth narrative is only found in 2 of the Gospels, and they're very brief. Both accounts are very brief. Luke, Matthew, same deal. In fact, Matthew's is even briefer. We don't get anything about the manger or nothing of that. All we get is these strangers coming to visit Jesus. And he's not an infant anymore. He's more of a toddler, right? Maybe 2 years of age. Probably Luke is telling us, Matthew's telling us that rather, to highlight God's love, not just for Israel, but, get this, for Gentiles. That would have been big news. And it would have been a point that you would want to make early if you're writing the story, especially considering who Matthew's audience was. We believe that his audience was probably 75% Gentiles and maybe 25% Jewish folks. I don't know about you, but if I'm going to listen to a story, I listen better if I know I'm part of it. Right? Tell me a story in which somebody I know is in it. I'll perk up then and stay awake. Somebody nudged John Cole there. Okay. In a sense, Matthew wants his readers to think back to the time of Abraham and Sarah. Remember them? To the birth of Isaac. But most importantly, even the birth of Ishmael. Remember Ishmael? Who was promised in that same story with the being able to have great nations come from him. Where do you think the Gentiles came from? Now, sometimes I've heard it said from pulpits, well, it's the Muslim faith that's coming from Ishmael. No. Not just the Muslim faith, but everyone else. All the Gentiles are included under this birth, this family genealogical line, you see. Because in Jesus, Matthew is telling us from the very start of his gospel, Jesus is the Messiah. God is saving who? All of us, the world. That would have been big, big news. Because for much of the scriptures, as you look back, it was as if the nation of Israel is special, it's unique, it's the one that God has got promises to, who's looking out for in a unique and particular way. But now, what Matthew is declaring is an expansion of that love and that grace to you, to me, to all of us. That's big news. It certainly would have been big news back then in his congregation when 75% of the people were Gentile, and they probably wouldn't like it too much if they heard something other than that. Am I right? Those foreigners needed to know that they were included in God's plans. And here they arrive in the form of the Magi. To be at the very beginning, the start of the story. How important that is. Kind of like when we talk about our children. You ever been around Christmas gatherings, New Year's gatherings, and oftentimes we talk about when we were little. Right? Maybe there's something about the new year starting that makes us feel like we're old. And so we have to go backwards and think about when we were young, and we think about when we were growing up, and we think about the new babies being born, and all of that. God has many sheep. Some of them may arrive at the gate like insiders. You see, remember that text? I don't remember which gospel it was in, but Jesus was going along and his disciples were there and they came back to Jesus and said, Jesus, we got problems. And Jesus like, what's the problem this time? Well, we ran into a group that are talking about you. And they're not one of us. I don't know where they got the story from. They're just out in the countryside talking about this stuff. Do you want us to go arrest them? You want us to go bring them in? I mean, they're not authorized by you. And Jesus said, no, I have sheep that you don't even know about. And so Matthew, along with the other Gospels, all agree that somehow God and Jesus Christ is opening up this new canvas to all of us. So what we believe about the star and the science behind their following and everything is of little circumstance, really, to this faith story. For the Magi came to give baby Jesus homage, worship. So every time you and I get up on a Sunday morning and travel down to this church, in a sense, we are recreating the first journey of the Magi. We are following the star of our lives. How do you like that one? I thought about that. I thought that was pretty good. Let me underwrite that. Isn't that cool? Up in there. Save that for later too, you know. Following the star of our lives. We're coming to give our worship to Christ, thanking him for coming and once again uniting the children of, say it with me, Abraham. Ready? The children of Abraham. Gosh, you guys are awake this morning. When King Herod heard of this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. When calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. Now, of course, you all know this. You would expect that if you're going to follow a star and you believe a king is going to be born, where would you show up? The palace. But King Herod doesn't have a new bouncing baby boy in the palace nursery. He's more, he kind of has a brothel, so not a good place for nursery, all right? So I can understand why he would be frightened by the prospect of a new king, who will no doubt come to put an end to his reign. You can't have two kings. Not in the ancient time, not in this life either. There can't be two kings. But why would all of Jerusalem be frightened? I underlined that. Why on earth would all of Jerusalem be frightened? Well, here's what I came up with. Maybe they know that when there are two kings, there will be bloodshed. They're not in support necessarily of Herod, but they understand what's coming. If there's two kings, there's bloodshed, there's war, there's violence. This stuff is coming down the road. And in this case, they're absolutely correct, aren't they? There will be a slaughter of innocents, all male children under the age of 2. Much like, if you know your scriptures, right? Much like another story that you might have heard before. Moses' story. Thank you. I know Donna. You know Donna. Anyway, okay, so she put, I'll take this paragraph out too. Much like the Egyptian Pharaoh ordered all of those male children born to those Hebrews to be cast into the Nile, drowned, for fear that the Hebrews were becoming what? Too numerous. They were becoming a threat to his own power. That's a theme that you might want to look at through history, is that people who are in power are always afraid of losing power, and even the smallest risk to that power becomes a threat. And usually they deal with it not by argumentation, not by debate, not by laws and order, but simply bombs, guns, knives, whatever instrument of war you would like. Verse 5, they told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel. Take a note here, maybe write it in the margin. Herod's supposed to be the king of Israel. He's also supposed to be the religious leader of Israel. Although he's under Roman orders, he still has those titles, and he's still a leader of the people we're talking about who are religious, following God. Yet he doesn't know his own scriptures. He's got to consult others to do it for him. Just saying. That's not a very powerful position to be in, is it? When you have to rely upon others to tell you exactly what you should do. He doesn't seem to know his own scriptures. I want to suggest that there's lots of people running around still to this day who don't know their scriptures and claim that they're doing things that Christians should do, and they don't realize they're wrong. Startling, isn't it? I know. Anyway, the location is determined, Bethlehem. Verse 7, then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage. When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen in the east, until it stopped over the place where the child was. This is fascinating to me. Now, if I was threatened by the power of this child being born, I might have sent a garrison, some troops along with these folks. Why didn't he do that? Or gone myself to make sure I did the deed and make sure for my own eyes that the problem is brought down. But that's really not how powerful people work, is it? A lot of powerful people, they don't want to get their hands dirty. They always have other people below them that will take care of those matters for them. And Herod seems to hatch a plan to find the child without creating any international incident. Kind of smart like that, isn't he? Oh, you go find him, and then send me word. That way it doesn't, no one gets suspicious. People get worried if there's some Roman soldiers running around looking for a baby, right? Well, we don't need to do that yet. Let's see if we can use these fools to tell us what we need to know. He'll let this caravan of foreigners do his dirty work for him. You know, it reminds me, I don't know why, but I'm kind of a student of World War II, and remember all the folks in the Nazi Germany, and some of the excuses were basically, I was just following orders. I mean, I just did what I was told to do. And they're the ones that had all that blood on their hands. You know what I mean? Anyway, might want to think about all the dirty work that some on the top tell you should do. Verse 10, when they saw that the star had stepped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. And then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Again, there's gosh darn it. Okay, I got to take that out. She talked about that. The presents are well thought out. It's by design. It's not just random. Gold is for a king, obviously. Frankincense, often used to anoint prophets. Myrrh, often used to anoint dead bodies. Martyr. Jesus Christ, the king, prophet, the martyr. I think Matthew wants to tell us that up front in this story, don't you? Who are you studying? Who are you looking at? Who is this Jesus? This is who he is. He's the king. He's God's son. He's a prophet. And he's come also to be a martyr. Yes, we should contemplate what gifts we bring to this child king, this child Christ as well. What will it be? What is significant to you about the identity of Christ? Countless hours tending the sick and the lame? Sounds pretty good to me. How about 10% and above from your 401k? I really like that one. I'm just telling you. Blood to the Red Cross. Eyeglasses to the Lions Club. Fresh bread for Holy Communion. A bag of groceries for the food pantry. A home, your home, for an orphan. A letter of outrage to your congressman or congresswoman. A sign for a protest march. Guess what? It's your call. It's your call. Verse 12. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. One thing is certain, according to Matthew. Christ has arrived. And no one, not even King Herod, will be able to stop him from his mission. He has come to overthrow the empires built on war, on violence, and on death. For in this story, as you will see, he will build his kingdom on love, even if that means laying down his life for his brothers and his sisters, so that we do not have to. Amen.